Hello everyone, welcome to our webinar today about the changes in pricing when you move to RISE with SAP. I look forward to telling you what we've found out so far in our projects, and we'll give some people still some time to log in. So bear with us for 3 minutes and then we'll start over. Thank you very much, everyone. And here we go again. Welcome to the webinar today. How does SAP pricing change when you move to RISE with SAP? This is one of the most important questions for all those clients who have RISE with SAP proposals on the table. So we want to dive into this subject matter. Bear with us and we'll go there. So first question, what are we hearing in the news with SAP? Let me show you some news. So Q2 and half year 2022 results. Cloud revenue going up by 34% and up 24% in constant currencies to become the largest revenue stream. So SAP is changing right now their revenue from maintenance to subscription, from 1-year contracts to multi-year contracts. How is this important? This is important for the stock market because that means they can already count on what's coming next year. Is this the single truth? Is this everything that you're seeing on the market? We'll get into that. Welcome with us, Viviana, Director of Sales for LATAM at VOQUZ Labs, Eduardo Duran, Director of Sales for the North American area, especially US and Canada, and I'm managing the business at VOQUZ Labs in America. So welcome again. Here we go.
Thank you. So thank you, Francisco. I think that we are seeing more and more with our customers everywhere a little bit of nervousness in the sense that we don't really understand what implications moving to the cloud have and what are the options that we have. And we are seeing that there are several salespeople from SAP doing very harsh pushes and trying to coerce our customers into going to RISE. But one of the things that I'm really interested in understanding during today's webinar is is RISE really for everyone, and how would that impact my own organization? How can I craft a strategy going forward that will make sense? And I will take this moment real quick to let you all know we will be addressing your questions. If you have questions at any time during this webinar, please feel free to input them in the questions option, and we will try to address them as they come. Thank you for the invitation.
Just notify me.
You're exactly right, Eduardo. I think it's very important to let our customers know what are the implications of moving to RISE, because they are pushed hardly by SAP. And also, I think it's very important to let them know that they still have options, not only RISE. So for those customers that RISE doesn't fit to them, I think it's very important to know what are their options and how they can negotiate with SAP specifically on their case. So it's very important to let the audience know also that this webinar is being handled in English. Si tienen ustedes preguntas en español ou se você tem perguntas em português, você pode enviar para a gente vai responder no email.
Okay, so let's go on. So first of all, let's start speaking about a new trend that's been there in market. Gartner has been illustrating this and pushing this a bit over the last 3 years to just bring out and give a name, as Gartner uses to, a trend that is going on in the market, and that is the so-called Composable ERP. And Gartner is saying by 2023, organizations that have adopted a composable approach will outpace competition by 80% in the speed of new feature implementation. So they will basically be quicker at implementing processes and applications that support their processes, and so to gain competitive advantage. How does this work with composable or packaged business capabilities? This is a research note by Tim Faith, Dennis Torrey, and Paul Schenk, published 2 years ago. And then again last year, they said, well, different parts of a business run and change at different speeds and with different capabilities. So with the ERP approach the last years, we went from legacy applications, managing hundreds of applications within a company, centralizing them into a single ERP system. But now, after 20 years of using ERP centrally, we suddenly find out, well, but we also have different subsidiaries, different business areas, and maybe this one-for-all approach is not necessarily the right thing for everyone. So now we are reconsidering away from the centralization that we have gone through with the big tools like SAP, like Oracle, like Workday. What can we do now to get specialized in specific areas? So Salesforce came up, and we had Workday coming up. We had Oracle HCM in the human capital management area. So specific solutions for specific areas with specific requirements. This is something that we have seen. And so over the last, I would say 3 years, we more and more see clients now considering when they are entering the area of CRM or the area of consolidation and planning, or when they go into robotic process automation, just not only looking at the main supplier that they have, but also at different suppliers. We'll look into the consequences of that. Have a look more in detail at those research notes and publications from Gartner if you're interested in that. But the basic idea is, yes, we have a centralized ERP system that covers like most of the requirements in our company, but in specific areas for specific companies, we want to reconsider and see what is the best of breed approach, what is the product that is easier to implement, that is the market leader. So what could we do there? Is it really SAP the best choice that we have, or is there something else? So composable ERP, some centric purchased software, let it be SAP in the case of our clients, but then again, for specific functions, specific other solutions that will be integrated in an API and integration layer. Why is this important? Because RISE with SAP may also be a step in this direction. RISE with SAP could be a solution for your whole company as SAP would like it to be, but likely it could also happen that you stick with ECC and use RISE with SAP in one of your areas, subsidiaries, etc. Or even that now that you are in the situation of having to decide, am I migrating to S/4HANA? Am I migrating to RISE with SAP? Well, should I maybe stay with ECC and migrate a part of my function to a new platform, RISE with SAP or Oracle or something else? So let's see the options that we have. Be aware that the Composable ERP is not an invention of Gartner. It is something that is happening in the market. It is a consideration that is a move against the big pressure of the big software suppliers to position their solution as the only one. Same thing as digital access is a push to bring SAP in the center and having it being the only solution. And now we are looking at eventually alternatives there. So let's investigate this. So if you are today now on SAP ECC, as most clients are, according to the statistics that we see, something between 20 and 30% of the clients have potentially already migrated to S/4HANA, let it be S/4HANA Cloud or on-premise. But most of the clients are still on SAP ECC and thinking, what is the next step? And SAP, as you can see here in the center, wants you to buy RISE with SAP. They're pushing very strongly to move you to this one single contract offering, which is S/4HANA Cloud, also called RISE with SAP. So moving away from perpetual licenses, as you have them today, to a subscription-based model. But is this
so, Francisco, I have a question. So what I'm seeing with my customers is a trend where in often occasions they are told that they are not allowed to continue in ECC and there will not be any support whatsoever in the future. And you just said that a lot of companies are deciding to stay on ECC. Is that still going to be a choice for our customers? Can they really extend the life of their ECC environment? How would this really pan out with what we're hearing from SAP salespeople?
Well, we have to be very pragmatic here. So not everything that you hear from salespersons reflects the real options that you have, to say it carefully. So we know that ECC support is going up to 2027. So we still have 5 years to go. After that, you would have to pay an additional 3% of maintenance to keep up with SAP maintenance and for ECC until 2030. That's additional 3 years. Or you go, as we can see here, you stick with ECC basically and get your support from SAP, and after that you move over to a third-party support company, let it be Rimini Street, let it be Spinnaker Systems, or one of the others who are playing in this market. So staying on ECC for a company who has a very low amount of changes in their SAP system is of course a viable option for many clients who are not at the front of technology or have a very conservative spending policy and just have already an SAP system that is well functioning and don't see the business case to now migrate to a higher platform with maybe questionable return on investment for them. So yes, some clients will definitely stay on ECC, first with SAP support, maybe later without. So this is an option. But then again,
so in other words, what you're saying is, if I have a company that is currently on ECC, I still have time to plan my strategy with SAP. I still have at least 5 to 8 years to figure out what's best for my company. So there's no rush, in other words, to do that right now, right?
You are bringing a very good point there. There is no rush The only people who have a rush here in getting you to change are the people who are paid on the compensation for selling Rise with SAP contracts, and that's the SAP sales force. So take this rush away. You are not in a hurry. You have 5 years to move over. You have a lot of time to do things. So take the rush away and consider these options really with the time and the data that you need to do that. So what else can we do? Let's say, okay, you really see the use of keeping up with SAP maintenance. You see the advantages of using the new platforms, the S/4HANA platforms. Fine. So I am really angry when I'm hearing today some salespeople telling, well, we don't sell ECC anymore. We don't sell S/4HANA on-premise anymore. Sorry, but that's just not the truth. ECC is still on SAP's price lists. S/4HANA on-premise is still on SAP's price list. Of course, it may be more advantageous for SAP to sell S/4HANA Cloud or Rise with SAP, but this is not the only option, and you really need to consider the other options as something serious. So do the analysis. We'll show you how, and we'll show you what it changes. So what are the options? Let's go through them from top to bottom. You can stay on SAP ECC, have maintenance till 2027 or 2030 with an additional payment. After that, go to third-party support. You can move to S/4HANA on-premise. So basically, you stay with your service provider, with your own data center, or you contract a hyperscaler if you haven't already done so. So you change your licenses for ECC licenses for S/4HANA licenses. We'll show you how that goes. You will still have a perpetual license contract and pay maintenance, so lower additional investment on that. You can move to Rise with SAP if it suits you. We'll show you what are the advantages and disadvantages of this. But now, to go to S/4HANA on-premise or cloud, you do have a migration. And in my eyes, many people are underestimating the fact that this migration costs money and time. And that although this migration for a mid-sized company may be easier than now moving to Oracle, Infor, Workday, UKG, whoever you want, there are still implications and advantages that speak for the one or the other solution. So now you realistically, if you have to migrate your central ERP system to another platform, which is S/4HANA, so please consider also the alternatives, at least to have a balance and a comparison of prices and see what you have in front of you. And then again, the composable ERP. We started with that. So why were we talking about the composable ERP? Because if now you have in your plan a project to implement financial consolidation and planning, if you're planning to introduce CRM, if you are implementing a procurement platform, then again, composable ERP, consider sticking with your ECC system or with S/4HANA for the central functions, but also the alternatives that are on the market, and build the business cases to weigh out which is the more interesting option. So
we have a question from our audience. We have a question from Victor Nardes. His question is, how to overcome the threat presented by SAP indirect access licensing against the Compostable ERP advantages?
Very good point. And you have to address this. There is no way around it. We have a standard project on how to do this, and we can show you the details about that in a specific presentation. But know that if you stay on SAP ECC, if you move to S/4HANA, whatever you do, digital access is a middle measure of pressure for you to do something, and you need to solve indirect usage with SAP because they have been allowed by specific court cases to do so. I still see lots of clients who haven't mitigated this, but mostly we see specific analysis and negotiations to decide, well, should I buy users? Should I buy document licenses? specifically how many of them should I buy. So we can do that analysis for you and show you what is the easiest and cheapest way to regulate your indirect usage. You need to do that at least before or as long as you have an SAP system in your house. And I know that SAP in occasions or some salespeople are using this to put pressure on clients to stick with the SAP way. But now, with this sword over your head, are you planning to still let SAP push you over the next 10 years to always have to buy SAP software instead of really analyzing which is the best software for your company? So my answer to that is clearly no. Solve this issue so that you can freely decide which is the best package and not always have to choose SAP just because they're the biggest software supplier in the house. You need to be able to decide freely. So we can help you in doing that. And yes, you have to mitigate that risk. There is no way around that. So RISE with SAP, this is what brings us here, and costs, the cost changes. Total cost of ownership, Gartner invented that term about 20 years ago, and this is really looking at the total investment and spending that you have for a certain product or process over a room of 5 to 10 years. So what is the difference here? You have ECC, perpetual licenses, you're paying maintenance, or you change to S/4HANA on-premise, you will still have a perpetual license usage, meaning you can still use the software. Also a thing that I even have seen in contracts, but very often salespeople are telling you, no, if you cancel maintenance, you can't use the software. Unless you got yourself into signing a contract that really explicitly tells you you aren't able to use the software after canceling it, you are, of course, allowed to use the software after canceling maintenance. This is a perpetual license in 99% of the contracts that I have seen with SAP.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great point.
That's a good point. Even for S/4HANA, correct, Francisco? They are still allowed to keep their licenses.
That's correct. That's correct, and that's important. So with S/4HANA on-premise, you will still pay maintenance. So you will have a certain level potentially of investment, something going from $13,500 upwards to a lot of money, and not be more concrete there. But what is on top of that? Well, you have probably your own data center or a service provider like T-Systems or whoever you have contracted, HP, DXC today, IBM, or you have a hyperscaler. So you have your software installed on some servers, some infrastructure, doing some SAP basis work, etc. Or you have RISE with SAP, which is basically the same on one single contract. So don't please start comparing your SAP ECC licenses with RISE with SAP licenses, because this is pears with apples. That doesn't add up. You need to really compare the full total cost of ownership, which is basically software plus infrastructure, against software plus infrastructure. Now, another thing here, of course, you already bought this software. So, of course, it is very likely that maintenance costs are lower than the subscription costs that you will have to pay here. First of all, because this is a subscription. So even a client who starts today, he would be paying only the rental. So he's not buying the house, he's only renting it. So you are not paying off this house. Now, I already invested in SAP. Am I renting my own house? So this is a key question, right? So if my friend starts now with RISE with SAP, and I have been now paying 20 years of maintenance to SAP, and I bought the licenses, so I bought the house, why am I now expected to rent my own house again? Well, they did some improvements in the house. They modified some things. I have a new room that was in the garden, etc. But am I expected to pay the same as my friend who is renting? I mean, this is my house. How am I paying the same rent as my friend who hasn't bought the house? So you need to really properly compare. And what this is saying is, ask SAP, what are the advantages that you're getting for renting the house that you already paid? This is called a cloud extension contract. And we'll get into this in some minutes. So this was about the comparison. What is RISE with SAP compared with the perpetual licenses? Now, talking about the alternatives, you could stay on ECC. Option number one, we stay with ECC. So no effort, no migration costs, everything fine. Yes and no, of course. What are the cons? Well, you won't get any updates after 2027, so this software won't keep in development. You have limited support options, so you could go as said with a third-party support providers. They will give you legal updates, so you can still do your tax declarations, that you can connect to the banks, etc., etc. But you won't get any new functionality. So pricing discounts may decrease as SAP pushes the cloud adoption. So you start buying new things, and SAP offers you now suddenly a 50% discount when you buy the cloud. If you buy on premise, we are not interested in selling them. I'm only giving you list price of 20% discount. So
Francisco, I just want to highlight the fact that there's something that we often say during all of our webinars and live events, which is one size doesn't fit all. Every SAP deployment and installation is different from one another. And when we're trying to figure out what our best strategy going forward is, really taking into a deep dive into, what's the best scenario for me. One of the things that I want to rescue from the previous slide that you mentioned is, if I already bought the house and I'm expected to go ahead and rent a new version of my own house, maybe upgraded, I also need to make sure that I'm maximizing the financials that I'm getting for that house that I already bought. And that's an entirely economic and financial exercise. You will be talking about that during this session as well, right?
Exactly. And I mean, think of the fact that it is a viable financial model. People buy a plant, a maintenance plant, a fabrication plant. They sell it out to a bank and lease it back. So this financial model works, but I'm getting money for my plant. So what money am I getting for what I already bought? We need to get into that. So let's discuss this. So this is an example of a contract, and what can you see here? These are the different product groups that this client had. Industry solution utilities, so the line of business software for SAP, from SAP for utilities. And in this case, you can see this is most of the contract. Then you have user licenses, then you have GRC products, mobile database, VPC, master data governance, etc., etc. So it is, of course, not the same to migrate a contract where the industry solution is most of what I'm doing, and it takes most of the costs also of what I'm doing today, and the users do, as it is to migrate a pure finance system. So you need to really get into the details and analyze every single contract, your particular contract, and understand the structure of it to meet the right decision here. It is, what happened here? I have no clue. I just changed the window for some reason. So lost my presentation somehow. This is the right one.
So in the meantime, while we resolve that, Viviana, have you been seeing this also in Latin America, this trend where SAP is trying to coerce their customers into migrating to RISE with SAP only and not necessarily looking into all the other options they have?
Yes, and also what I have been getting from our customers are questions about what if they decide to go to third-party support, for example, and then come back with SAP and try to migrate to RISE or S/4HANA. Can they do that? Can they come back to maintenance, for example? And if they are going to get, for example, some back billing on maintenance, what are the options for all these customers that, for example, want to go for a third party for a couple of years for whatever reason, financial reason they have right now, and then they will decide, for example, after 2027 or 2030 to come back with SAP and opt for RISE or S/4HANA?
It's a good question, and some clients have done so, and some clients have gone to third-party support and enjoyed it for a time, and then they decide to move back to SAP. Now, in the end, it is a financial question, right? So it is not like I went away. I've driven Mercedes my whole life. Well, would be lucky if I had, but let's assume I had driven Mercedes my whole life. Now I changed to BMW, and now, no, you can't go back to Mercedes. Well, that's not the way the world works. So you can contract your maintenance from SAP. You can move to Rimini Street or Spinnaker Systems for a couple of years. And now you stand in the decision of, am I going back to SAP? Or am I buying Oracle, Microsoft Dynamics? So what shall I do? I mean, there should be some motivation within SAP to win you back as a client, right? And so is the situation in reality. So basically, the client puts at the table, well, I have been paying 20 years of maintenance before I went the last 5 years to Rimini. What do I get in exchange for coming back to you? What do I get in exchange for now implementing S/4HANA? I don't want to pay the full price again. So there are options, and we can illustrate you about that in detail in your particular case. But of course, SAP will be interested in winning you back. So going back to S/4HANA, option number 2, S/4HANA on-premise. I got to look at my clock, sorry, so we come over the structure of this presentation. S/4HANA on-premise. So it is said to be dead. SAP is only talking about the RISE with SAP. No, it is not. Most large enterprises still consider S/4HANA on-premise as their one choice, their strategic choice to move on with SAP. They are not even thinking about RISE with SAP. And you are the client. You are to decide, not the software supplier, where you're going to. So in the end, compare this with all options. Now, if you want to stay on S/4HANA on-premise, if you want to move from ECC to S/4HANA on-premise, you have two modalities on how to do that. That's the contract conversion and the product conversion. Now, 2 weeks ago, I got a proposal in my hands that was SAP suggesting to a client that the only way to move from ECC to S/4HANA on-premise would be doing a contract conversion. And now they were putting up a so amazingly high price that the contract conversion was just not an option for the client. And RISE with SAP appeared to be the only choice. This is not the case. Don't let them fool you. So this particular client could have spent $13,500 to buy SAP Enterprise Management and just do a product conversion. He had only finance products on his table. So basically, with a little spend, he could just move over to S/4HANA and wouldn't need to implement RISE with SAP, unless he wanted to, of course. But I mean, you need to really know the options that you have. This is not the way sales should be done. You should get all the choices and then decide. So what is a contract conversion? This is you sell out to SAP your old ECC contract, get money for it, as much as you spend, in fact, and you change this against the price of the new S/4HANA licenses. When does this make sense? Let's assume you have 30% of shelfware in your old contract. Now, to move over to S/4HANA, you want to get rid of 30% of old software and exchange it for new things that you need from SAP. Then this is the way to go. Lots of shelfware, contract conversion. No shelfware. I'm changing only my core ERP ECC towards my core S/4HANA system. Basically, one product to one product, exactly the same product set as I had before. Go for a product conversion. You spend a little money in the right to migrate to S/4HANA, which is the S/4HANA Enterprise Management product. And then you keep your user license types, the old user license types. Let it be an advantage or disadvantage, depends on your particular solution. But basically, you are not changing your contract. You stick with your old ECC contract. You get the right to migrate to S/4HANA. And eventually, this is a very, very cheap solution for you to go and the right way to go. So you are not forced to go to RISE here either. You can stick with your old licenses. You change them for S/4HANA licenses. You spend little money. If you have shelfware, you'll stick with it, unless you do the contract conversion, but still an option. So why are clients still considering S/4HANA on-premise an option? Think of it, infrastructure. Now, many clients say, well, one contract for software and infrastructure, I don't have to take care of managing a hyperscaler, a systems provider. That's good for me, yes. But now you are a car manufacturer and you have specific service level agreements. You don't have 4 servers, you have 4,000 servers or 400,000, and you have 30 data centers in different locations, different geographies. You don't want SAP to be managing your SAP environment, your SAP infrastructure. You want direct access to the guys who are managing your server. You want to make use of the full hyperscaler functionality, say Elastic servers that grow whenever you want them. You don't want to rent a subsum of the hyperscaler functionality, like fixed servers that you could be hosting in any neighborhood data center. You want the full functionality of a hyperscaler with elasticity, with disaster recovery in different geographies, etc., etc. This is not part of a RISE with SAP contract. A part of it is there is some disaster recovery, by the way, quite expensive. You want the full functionality of a hyperscaler, you want separate contracts, then you want to stay on S/4HANA on-premise. And this is something that many companies are doing. Don't let anyone fool you and tell you this is not an option anymore. It is.
But this would be more depending on the size of the customer and their installation, right? So this option could be good for someone probably mid to larger size. It seems like a natural evolution from my legacy ECC installation. We don't foresee an end of life that has been published like for ECC in 5 years plus 3. So this could be one of the favorite potential options, as we are keeping our perpetual software licenses, but it allows us to, be in compliance with SAP as well, correct?
Well, you could think that, but my answer is a clear no. So yes, if you are a very big company, it is very likely that S/4HANA on-premise will be the go-to option for you. But then again, if I see the price list of RISE with SAP, and I see what an additional development server would cost me being a small client, compared to what this same server would cost if I contracted directly with Microsoft Azure or Amazon AWS or Google Cloud Services, I don't see this clearly. So this is a case-by-case decision. Unless you get SAP to put a really, really attractive proposal on the table, There is not the saying, rise with SAP is the right thing for small enterprises who want to have it simple. No, because having a simple contract can be very expensive for you in the long term and very inflexible. So it can be a good option, and it is likely that this Rise with SAP offering is more suitable for small companies, but unless you fulfill a certain set of conditions, like conditions to increase the memory of my servers, the prices to extend the number of environments that I have for quality development, etc. Unless you can certify that an additional, I don't know, 512 gigabyte memory server for development gets more or less the same cost as you get with one of the hyperscalers, why would you go there? I mean, you don't want to be paying this year that much, and now you need an additional server. Now you didn't need something else. You get surprised by a totally unacceptable price. So make sure that you tie up all the conditions of not only what you need today, but the growth that you may have over the next years, because this growth can be a total surprise and really come up with something that in the end is far more expensive than what you have today. So yes, Rise with SAP is an interesting thing for some people. So you need to really get down to the details here too. How do we do that? Go on. Sorry, Eduardo, you wanted to ask something.
No, I was just thinking that, you know, it is important to understand the options that we have and what are the possibilities for my own installation, going, you know, into a 5 to 10 year strategy for my own company. If I don't have that information, the decisions that I'm making are not necessarily the best, right? So in order to make you know, these informed decisions, we need actionable information, and that's where I believe VOQUZ Labs has the potential to assist and provide, you know, visibility into what really are my options, right?
Yep. And this is what we mostly solve with financial scenarios. These things you see here are an example of a Composable ERP. This is basically a client deciding for human capital management, for planning, for some warehouse management things. Should I choose SAP over other things? So this is one of 10 scenarios, probably not that many, some realistic 3 to 4 scenarios in the end that we put together with the client in assessing, well, what is the way to go? Now, this client had a lot of changes and issues in front of him. So here we spend a lot of time, but it doesn't need to be that complicated, but you need to take the time and set up and print out the financial scenarios in front of you. And well, what is the way to go? Why is this coming up all the time? Here we go. So option number 3, Rise with SAP, SAP's preferred choice for you.
Of course.
What is interesting? First of all, cloud extension, question mark. Why question mark? We'll get into that. Problem is, SAP should be offering every client a cloud extension when he goes to Rise with SAP, but they aren't. So this is what I'm seeing in the market. Cloud extension is exactly, well, if you want me to rent my house, what am I getting in exchange for that, right? And this is this extension. I'm not signing a new contract. I'm making a deal with you, so show me what I'm getting for it. So you lose your previous investment to a certain extent because you're renting again. You pay subscriptions now in the future. You migrate to SAP infrastructure / hyperscaler of choice. They give you 3-4 hyperscalers to choose from, and then they build your infrastructure on Azure, Alibaba, AWS, etc. So you have a problem, an issue here that is relatively new to me. Sorry for that. Maybe many of you knew that already, but now when you sign a contract, you do a contract conversion and sign for S/4HANA. So you are on ECC, you sign an S/4HANA contract because you plan to migrate in the next 5 years to S/4HANA, and you're getting rid of shelfware, and that's suitable for you to sign it today. What do you get? You get the right to use either S/4HANA or ECC or both for a certain period of time. So 5 years until 2027. So implementation phase, you can extend it over 5 years. You can keep on using ECC, start implementing S/4HANA. Sadly, you don't get this with RISE with SAP. So it means I sign for RISE with SAP today, and potentially, if I don't implement it over the next 3 years, I will be paying three years of subscription and still be paying my ECC maintenance because I canceled my licenses. I was not allowed to use them anymore. I don't know this strange policy. I don't know if this just wasn't foreseen, if they are liking to forget it, whatever, but please pay attention to that. Else you will end up paying maintenance and subscription during your implementation phase. So you get your new S4 user types. You use the full user equivalent user model, which is quite a positive thing. I like that. You can exchange user licenses as you need them over the year. You have some higher migration costs. Well, higher costs here means, of course, subscription is higher than maintenance, right? But you're also getting infrastructure, so you have to balance this. Migration costs, you have some, but you have also infrastructure migration costs. So if ECC is on your own data center, you have to migrate it now to Amazon, whoever you are putting your infrastructure on. So there is a certain effort there. No parallel use ECC plus S4. And that's about it. But you gain reduced IS, so infrastructure management effort, one single contract, subscription, so costs no capex, no added functionality of hyperscalers, as I said, very simple version of the hyperscaler model. Well, here the price markups for infrastructure, something to take care of. Right? Okay, so if you are considering migrating to S/4HANA or RISE with SAP, we can help you, by the way, doing the user simulation, understanding. I have today workers, limited professional users, this 7, 8, 10 types of users. How many of each would I need on S/4HANA? Based on a transaction analysis, we can do this estimation for you with our tool SEMQ. Keep that in mind. It's a very simple project. So, subscription. You are now paying subscription on RISE with SAP. What changes? You paid maintenance. Now you have the main licenses, so the user licenses that give you access to the main system, to the core SAP system. You have the line of business solutions, earlier called engines. Now they are business metric based, mostly things like revenue, spend, etc. Here up left the users, here left down the line of business solutions, digital access, so indirect usage. So far, I haven't seen people paying this for Oracle or other tools. Still an advantage of them. Infrastructure add-ons. So let's say you need an additional development system environment, you need more memory, you need disaster recovery, you need long-term backup, you need different tenants. There are add-ons to your RISE with SAP main offering that you need to buy if you want to have all of this. Also, now you have your SAP system connected to, let's say, 20 other different systems delivering data SAP or getting data out of SAP. Now, these integrations, you have to also redo them now in the cloud. So think of this integration project because it may be a very relevant project. And then you have the business technology platforms, earlier called HANA Cloud Platform, which is the new application development, an API platform on the cloud from SAP with interfaces to lots of systems, but also additional license costs. So consider this integration project as part of the migration project, because you have to do it unless you want to have only a part of the costs considered.
So in other words, so we start from the number of licenses that I will really require, and how do I convert them into the new metric called the FUEs. But in order to get there, you know, I think that there's an important part of how do I know that over the past years where I've been a customer of SAP with my ECC, how do I know I have good control over my licensing and how my users are assigned? So we can start, like you said, with that and making sure that we are only considering those licenses that we require from SAP, and then convert them into the new full user equivalents. Once we get there, we need to go into everything else that you described, including the process of integrating that with the rest of my systems. Typically then, and I just want to highlight this fact, we're not just comparing the cost for SAP when we go in and look into this as a strategy going into the future. But we also need to look at, you know, what it will take to get this up and running and transition from what I currently have into that new environment. And that's a very important part of this mix, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. You need to really make the whole bill to do this comparison. So it is not a good decision to make quick choices when it comes to RISE with SAP. It may be a very interesting alternative for your company, but you really need to make the full bill of it. How do we do that when we do projects? You will see from us before the end of the year a template and a software to help you in this decision process, by the way. And what do we take here into account? So we need to analyze the migration costs to S/4HANA, but eventually we want to compare them to the migration costs to Oracle, Infosage, Microsoft, whatever. And so we need to compare the license costs, the infrastructure costs, the API license and migration costs, the indirect use costs that eventually disappear if you move to a new platform or come in if you choose the SAP option. So once you have all of these financial scenarios all together, you can complete the comparison, decide what are the better choices for your company, and then start deciding on the negotiation strategy and starting to decide what to ask from SAP, right? Don't compare RISE with SAP with ECC. That's just not enough.
I'm sorry, Francisco. We have a question from Baron Biswas. He says, we are on S4 hosted with SAP ECS, not cloud, but want BTP products as well. How does that yearly license evaluation look like?
Sorry, you need to repeat the question because I only got a part of it.
They are currently on S4 hosted with SAP ECS, not cloud, but want BTP products as well. How does that yearly license evaluation look like?
Okay, very good. Mostly the comparison between, if this is what you're asking, and if not, please extend the question. And we are a bit in a hurry, so eventually we will answer the full question after the webinar. But to what you said, if you are considering moving from S/4HANA on-premise to RISE with SAP plus BTP, basically the process is more or less the same, just that contract conversion or product conversion doesn't exist. It is just well, change your S/4HANA against which is your own against RISE with SAP. Now you need to do a proper TCO analysis, because the problem is it is very likely that if you're already on S4, you did it over the last 5 years. So eventually you're still paying off your investment into S/4HANA, and now they want you to move into yet another platform. So how do you do the financial comparison? You need to compare the write-off of your CAPEX that you're still bearing with you, plus the maintenance compared to the new subscription cost for BTP plus RISE with SAP, but also take into account the infrastructure costs. So it is a bit of a little more complex financial scenario, but we can support you in that. Not really highly complex, but it has some specifics there. Contact us and Eduardo will tell you about the options. So a business case for RISE with SAP, and this goes for S/4HANA too, right? Reduce the overall costs, software and infrastructure costs. Is this a driver? Do I have the potential to now drive down my overall TCO of SAP by moving to RISE with SAP? If not, this is not your business case. So am I adding business value? So do I, by migrating to RISE with SAP, now gain additional revenue? Can I reduce some costs of operation in my company? Can I reduce the value of my assets and get rid of some assets? Do I have a business case, business value out of business metrics? If no, then this doesn't support your migration to RISE with SAP. Do I have reduced risks? So can I decrease my out of stock, improve my bill to cash process or my procure to pay process? If not, I don't have a business case. So don't forget, this is a business case. You need a business case behind everything that you do. It's not just, it's new, I need to go there. SAP says so. So start building the business case. And it is likely that with new functionalities that SAP is offering, you have opportunities to gain business value in specific areas or not. But you need to do that analysis with your business units and really take the time. So don't let them push you into making a decision in the next 3 months. Just take the time to properly analyze the thing and have a justification to do this additional spend to move over to RISE with SAP, eventually increase your yearly costs, but because you have a specific clear business value in doing so.
I think you've touched a really sensitive point for a lot of our customers. There seems to be a lot of pressure and rush put into our customers, and I believe that, as you pointed out, if there's an offer from SAP right now, they will, even though they say it will expire, you will probably be able to get those discounts again. At the end of the day, you want to make the best decision for your company and not a rush decision just because they need to meet a deadline for the partner. Right?
And if you're there, fine. I'm not, and nothing against that. My preoccupation is basically the fact that I'm just seeing people signing for RISE with SAP, just being pushed over there without making the right considerations, and this has serious implications on the next year of your application strategy, your choice of suppliers, many things. So just take the time to get there. So what else? Talking about costs now and financial changes. So we were in a house that we bought. Now we decided it got too old. I don't want to do the maintenance. I rent a new house. Okay, I'm moving towards this. So we've been comparing here, and sorry for that, this analysis is right now probably already 3-4 months old. The yearly prices for RISE have changed over time. But when we did this, we wanted to show you something. Depending on your sector and the configuration of users that you have, whether you have a bigger weight in productivity users or professional users. So this is a client in the production sector. He has more productivity users, less professionals. In this case, we can see a difference comparing pears with apples, comparing pure on-premise without infrastructure with RISE with SAP. Over 10 years, this is a price, an additional price of 37%. In opposite to that, if you take a client with more financial activity, so more professional users, the difference goes up to 50% or 49%. Now, this is comparing a greenfield implementation, of course. If you have brownfield implementation, as we today know, you are likely to buy RISE with SAP today, start paying licenses today, and still paying the maintenance for your ECC system, unless you can certify to SAP that you will migrate to RISE with SAP on the 1st of January, which is not really likely to come up. I mean, who does a migration in 6 months? No one. Be realistic. Okay, so what does that mean basically? If I compare software only to software that includes infrastructure, that is saying for this client, SAP is charging me 50% on top for infrastructure. Do this comparison. Maybe
surprising, huh?
Different in your case, but in this case, this is the way it went. And I gotta jump, sorry, Eduardo, we are over time already. So remember things that we need to go through. Don't let SAP not mention your cloud extension policies. So if you want to rent the house that you already purchased, ask what you're getting in exchange for it. Do the full analysis. So don't take RISE with SAP as the only alternative. Consider the options with and without SAP seriously. Consider when you compare infrastructure, include this in the comparison, because else this comparison is worth nothing. And it is very likely that you will get a proposal that doesn't include all the infrastructure options that you need, that is undervalued, because they can come next year and ask for more money. You probably didn't make this experience for the first time, so be sure of planning upfront and considering the full infrastructure. Include your infrastructure department when negotiating RISE with SAP. Consider staying on SCC or third-party support if you have no business case for S/4HANA or RISE with SAP migration. The migration is not for free, so you basically need to justify those migration costs and eventual additional license costs. Consider moving to SAP S/4HANA on-premise with or without a hyperscaler. You can also just take your ECC environment and do a lift and shift towards a hyperscaler and eventually lower your costs. And with this, finance a part of your migration to S/4HANA on-premise. So evaluate migration and license costs to other ERPs. You have to migrate anyway. And request parallel use rights for ECC and RISE. So I was saying, this is just not included in your contract. I'm not saying you can negotiate that. Just think of doing so, because if you don't, you won't get it. And with this, I fear we are coming to the end. As you can see in our advisory service portfolio, we have a RISE with SAP proposal evaluation, a cloud products negotiation support program, an S/4HANA migration strategy and ELP. So just think of including us in this decision process. We can help you setting up the financial scenarios that you need to do this analysis before making a decision with SAP. Thank you very much. Thank you, Eduardo and Viviana, for supporting me in this presentation. And thank you to everyone who came to the presentation today. Looking forward to be in touch with you. Come to us with your questions if you have any, and we'll gladly answer this after the presentation. You can see our general email address here. Send also your questions there, and we'll gladly contact you and see if there is something we can do for you. Thank you very much. See you soon.
Thank
you,
you.
everyone. Take care.
Take care.